This thing with Unity is not going to be good. There's a lot of survival games built in Unity because Unity is used a lot by indie companies. And more often than not, if you're playing like survival games, base building games, tower defense games, the kind of games that I like, most of them are made by smaller studios, indie studios, and a lot of them utilize Unity. So, well, before I get started on the game real quick, I wanted to talk about something because I feel like this is really going to affect possibly a lot of the games that I play and probably some of the games you play. If you didn't see, Unity, which is one of the bigger engines, gaming design engines that you can use. I mean, it's Unity's Unreal Engine's probably the biggest, but Unity's pretty high up there. And I'm not going to read through this whole thing. Basically, what they did was they're going to change their pricing model. So they're going to start charging devs per install if they make a certain amount. So like any game that's over 200K, they're going to be charging you like up to 20 cents per install. And of course, they backtrack on this a little bit because they got annihilated on social media when they announced this. I think they announced it yesterday. So I'm not even going to check Twitter because Twitter was just an absolute disaster for them. Literally, there were games that were one of the games, as an example, that I bought and haven't even played yet. They tweeted out, the developers of Call to the Lamb, which I bought and haven't even played yet. This is made in Unity. The developers said, because the pricing effect goes into place on January 1st, their developers said they're going to delete their game from Steam. They're going to delete it everywhere. Like it's not going to be available on January 1st if this pricing plan goes into effect. I don't know who, Axios reached out to them for some clarification, and I thought there were some couple interesting things in here. As an example, there's a lot of popular games were made in this, right? So this is the Among Us devs said stop it. So Among Us has a lot of people still play Among Us. Another studio, Aggro Crab, called on Unity to reverse its plan, saying that it feared that its next game set for release to the 25 million subscribers on Game Pass could incur fees that threaten the stability of our business. So then they asked them about that specifically. As for Game Pass and other subscription services, that would probably, I guess that would include PlayStation Plus. Witten said the developers like AgriCrab would not be on the hook as the fees are charged to the distributors, which in the Game Pass example would be Microsoft. Imagine you want to release your game on Game Pass. Now this comes up. So even though the dev is not going to be on the hook for it, is Microsoft going to fork over boatloads of money? Now they'll probably end up getting some kind of deal if this actually goes into place where they won't have to pay the full amount that was over here, whatever this is. The reason this is like a massive issue is because this affects a lot of games. The Game Pass thing, I mean, Microsoft could probably eat it, but then again, let's say you put your game on there and it's like Hi-Fi Rush or High on Life like last year, where they get super popular and like 10 million people just try them. That means Microsoft's going to get charged for every one of those installs. And because people just install games on Game Pass regularly and play them for an hour and uninstall them, that's going to rack up the cost really quickly. I went and looked up which games are using Unity just to see which games I've played that will be affected by this. So Cuphead, Ori's super popular. I mean, Pokemon Go's kind of gone, but like Hearthstone, Hollow Knight Silksong, I'm almost positive is being made in Unity, so that hasn't even come out yet. Hollow Knight Silksong is one of the highest wishlisted games on Steam, and I believe it's coming to Game Pass, which means it's literally going to have millions of players on day one. Imagine what happens if they have to pay per install. Among Us is still pretty popular. So the game's like, I put Rust on my wish list. When Rust goes on sale, I'm probably going to buy it and try it out. Subnautica, big survival game. Gunfire Reborn was a pretty good game. Fall Guys. Scrolling down here a little bit further, we got the other Ori game, Ori and the Will of the Wisps. RimWorld, massively popular game, very highly rated. Risk of Rain I played. Escape from Tarkov is a very popular game still. The big one's Valheim, which I'll talk about in just a second. Inscription was like a super highly rated game a couple years ago. So you can just see all these games. It's just the popular ones that came up. But the one that was most concerning to me, Valheim has been played by over 10 million people, like well over 10 million people. It had 10 million sales on Steam alone, from what I remember. And it's on Game Pass now, which means even when there's a big update, it'll get like the last big update for this game. It had it had concurrent players of like 100 and something thousand. So you can only imagine 500,000 to 1 million people trying it. Like when the Ashlands update comes out, which is the next big update, if it actually happens now, how many people are going to play it and they're going to have to start paying? They're going to basically be getting charged per install. My concern is the slowness with which Valheim's been getting updated, considering it released in 2021. February 2nd, 2021, the game released, and it was supposed to be finished within like a year. That's obviously not happened. With their update cadence has been pretty slow. And my big concern is going to be, is Valheim going to have to switch engines? Or like, essentially, it's more likely than not, Unity's going to have to backtrack on this and do something else. But even if they do that and completely walk it back, is anybody going to trust them going forward? And are all these games that are built on it currently, or that are currently being built on it? Like there's probably hundreds and hundreds of games, if not more, in development right now that are being built in Unity that may have to switch their engines. Imagine how slow the updates for Valheim are going to be if they have to port the entire game code over to some other game engine and then basically have to do all that from scratch and then start doing updates. I can't imagine this game. Now, they're not going to charge them retroactively in terms of like there's been 10 million players, so they have to pay 20 cents for each player or install. But this game has already cracked the maximum thresholds that were on the website. So if you look at the fees, like they've already gotten over 1 million players, whatever the thresholds were here. They've done $1 million in sales, and they've had over 1 million players. So they're going to be paying. They've cracked all this. They're going to be paying whatever. I don't know which tier they fall under. Even if it's 1 cent, that's a lot of freaking money. And my concern is going to be what's going to happen with the. I really hope they backtrack, but I really would like to hear from developers like Iron Gate specifically and see what their thoughts on this are. I didn't go checking Twitter for every developer that posted on it, but this game's already taking forever to finish, and I really just feel like this thing with Unity is not going to be good. There's a lot of survival games built in Unity because Unity is used a lot by indie companies, and more often than not, if you're playing like survival games, base building games, tower defense games, the kind of games that I like, most of them are made by smaller studios, indie studios, and a lot of them utilize Unity. So I already checked. Deep Rock Galactic is made in Unreal Engine, so no worries on Deep Rock Galactic is safe. I didn't check all my games, but I was skimming through and I kind of looked at that list. So that's just kind of where I don't even know what the game I'm going to be playing tonight is in. I'm not sure what Sunken Land's in. I don't know if it says at the beginning. I have to load it back up, but it's kind of crazy that a game engine like that can just completely turn around and go retroactive on people and be like, yeah, anybody that plays your game, you're going to get punished for it. It's like, it's not going to fly. It's really going to probably hurt free-to-play games. They had some crazy stuff in there where it was like, if you download people downloading, like as an example, let's say this goes into place and I play Valheim, which uses Unity, and they decide to stick with Unity. If I install and uninstall games all the time. Like if I play this for an update, I'll play it, then I'll uninstall. As you notice, I don't have that many games installed over here. I have very few games installed. I only have games installed that I like actively play regularly or that I've played recently or I'm going to play. So I don't have a lot of games installed. So basically and it's not because I lack hard drive space. I have plenty. I think 4 terabytes of hard drive space to put games on. I just don't want to have, I uninstall them when I'm not playing them. Imagine if a game is on Game Pass or PS Plus where people download them for an hour, play them for a couple hours, and uninstall them. And then, the game, they want to play it again. They reinstall it. So, like, they're saying there's a way they're going to be able to track reinstalls. I don't know how they're going to do that, but it's going to be interesting to see where this goes. So, yeah, that's kind of where what my thoughts on the Unity thing. I really hope they backtrack, but that's just kind of a scummy thing to do. Especially going retroactive on games that have, like, especially these indie games that have popped off using your engine and giving your engine a name. Like Valheim popping off and Among Us, those games blowing up, I guess Fall Guys too, getting millions of players. That would make it where more indie developers would be like, wow, they made a best-selling game with this engine, and it's really easy to use, and it's also really easy to mod, by the way. So that's why a lot of people use it. Anyway, that's my thoughts on Unity, so we'll see what happens in the future.